This has been awesome. I want to thank Jason for putting this all together. I've learned a lot already so far this morning, so thank you so much. And thank you for coming. So, Jason asked me to talk about why good design matters a little bit. And if you were in my session yesterday, I apologize for a little bit of you know, um, a review on some of the things that I went over yesterday. But speaking, we were talking about AI, and is this not an amazing image that I actually produced? Took me 2 weeks to produce this. It's like, no, AI in like 2 seconds. I wanted something kind of Lion of Judah, but in a digital form, and this is what it spit out. So it was pretty cool. Real quick, before I gave you guys one of these. This is not necessarily for you, but somebody you may know who may be interested in Faulkner's digital media program. And you can see on the back some of the amazing and cool classes that we'll be having and teaching. And I also wanted to share with you, talking about repurposing content. I repurposed my life story of how I became a Christian. It's called Quest for Truth, Tommie Washington. So I actually gave them all out the other day to another group, so I don't have any more copies, but you can get it for $5 on Amazon if you. And it's really good for people because I was a faith-only sinner's prayer believer before I became a member of the Lord's Church. So if you know somebody like that who's kind of in that same space, this would be a great book for them. Okay. All right. So as I said yesterday, I could have, started out with a slide like this, but I figured, with my background, that probably wouldn't go over too well. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of slides like this over the years being in the Lord's Church. That were not designed all so well, but so I'm here to change that. So the psychology of good design, we see divine design all around us, right? In our physical world, designed by God Himself, the divine designer. So what do we see? We see symmetry, right? We see balance in God's design. We see shape. We see pattern, right? I mean, it's just all around us. We see some amazing colors. We see these amazing, mathematical compositions, and we get used to it, right? And so, because we see God's design all around us, we're accustomed to it, to experience it. We're accustomed to His masterful design on a daily basis, and when those same attributes are used in our digital media, our viewers experience something that's called biophilia. All right, have you heard of biophilia? It's the feeling that everything is in balance, everything is working kind of like our surroundings, right? It's kind of like what God designed. So if we're designing things that are not aligned, so that you have these three, let me just go forward. I'm sorry, I'm getting out of. All right, let me just back up. So even though we don't have or haven't been trained in design, because we're familiar with it from what we see in God's nature and God's divine design, when we experience that design and those same principles, it's pleasing, it's intriguing, it enhances the communication experience. So, you take a slide like this, and what's wrong with this, right? If we just look at one of the simple things that God created, we like seeing things in groups. We like a hierarchy where we go from large to small, and it's just something as simple as like a fern or whatever kind of plant this is. We just to group things, give this a little bit more hierarchy with a bolder type, and separate it out in groups just makes it more pleasing, right, to the eye. So so here are the guys that I was looking for here. So these three German guys came up with this theory of Gestalt, right? Gestalt design theory or psychology. And 6 principles: figure and ground, similarity, proximity, closure, continuity, and order. And you can, find out more about these concepts online. But they're just basic concepts when it comes to design, right? Some of the things that we'll and are already teaching, our students in our digital media program. But it has to do with that biophilia and using what God created himself when it comes to, proximity and balance and things of that nature that we just see all around us. So let's talk about bad design a little bit, right? Not using biophilic or Gestalt theory can trigger something within us that just doesn't quite feel right. There's some tension. One of my art directors in the past would say when something was a little out of whack, or even within an animation and it wasn't quite right, he said, "There's some tension here. Can we fix this? There's some tension." So, in our, if we're talking about sharing the gospel, if that tension is there in our design, then it may cause someone to move on to the next page, right? Move on to the next post or whatever, because it's not pleasing visually, intellectually, emotionally, right? So it's not always about what we're saying, the textual part of the message, but the visual as well, the balance, right? So when things move, they feel alive, right? And so that's why when I first started seeing my work move within animation, I just said, I got to be an animator, because it was just so exciting to see it move, right? So years ago, back in '96, ESPN decided they wanted to start a new network called ESPN News, and they put me and another guy on it. Now there's like a whole army of people that, when they want to do something, like when they came over with the SEC network, and they, designed the whole 3D animation package for the SEC network in Charlotte. I mean, they had people up in Bristol in the main office working on it. They had people down in Charlotte where I worked working on it, and probably 30, 40 people altogether. For ESPN News, 2 people, me and this guy named Wayne Elliott. But we came up with a lot of innovative stuff. It was the first time somebody, myself, designed a 3D animation for ESPN that actually aired on the network. So unlike yesterday, I'm going to actually show you some of this stuff moving. I'm going to try to anyway. Can I just hit it like that? Okay, here we go.
This is ESPN News. Hi, folks. I'm Mike Tirico, and welcome to Sports History, the first 24-hour, 7-day-a-week network devoted exclusively to sports news, highlights, scores, information, and analysis. ESPN News is sports on demand. Plain and simple, we'll be here when you need to know, and whenever you...
So that open there you saw, again, this is '96. So all the software we had was After Effects. I think that's all we had was After Effects. And so me and Wayne went out to a factory, and he knew this place where they had these cylinder tubes that were clear, and we brought them back and we put them under the camera, and we put some type, just printed out some type and twisted the type with the tubes, and we brought that into After Effects, and we layered different imagery on top of imagery, and to create that open. And so just trying to be innovative, right? Just using what you have at your disposal, but trying to do something different. So, and I think in the Lord's church, we can still do that. We can still be innovative. We can still try to do things differently. And we talked about some of those things earlier today, right?
So that intro came off of physical elements.
Yeah, yeah, for the most part. And then just, just layering things in After Effects, yeah. Creating some of those, graphic elements that you saw in Illustrator and, and then kind of animating them within After Effects and stuff like that. But,
How long did that take you?
oh man, it probably took us a good, to get the final version, a good 2 to 3 weeks, just kind of continually playing with stuff and then working with the music and all that stuff. But it was the first time we did a bottom line. So, of course, we see that on all the sports broadcasts nowadays. But that was the first time we did that. And here, I'll show you some other stuff that we did. Again, trying to be innovative. The concept was it's kind of like to do a visual newspaper, and you'll see there, you actually have like some newspaper type column type text in some of the graphics. But just to take it a step further and make it like a digital representation of the news, but of all sports news and all highlights and things of that nature. It was interesting to see Mike Tirico with hair. I'm sure you talked about. So a lot of this stuff is going to be really old that you'll see, but again, it's like 96, 97. Yeah.
So what would you say to design, I guess, particularly with churches or parachurch organizations? I don't know. Churches in particular, though, that have a design that's dated that leads to a negative experience. So, for instance, I've got two websites in mind, one secular and one that's one in the Brotherhood. So the first one, Space Jam. Whenever the Space Jam website came out, which y'all can look it up, and it's still running as it was, and whenever it first came out. But the Space Jam website, whenever it first came out, was undoubtedly really cool. If you look at it now, and I'm saying this as someone who is younger than Space Jam, I think. Definitely.
Yeah.
I see that, and there's sort of a, comical. I don't take it seriously. And then Brotherhood. I'm sure whenever Stephen Rudd started to make Bible.ca, which I'm sure a lot of y'all have used if you've done research on the Exodus or things like that. I'm sure whenever he started that website, there was some innovative things that were done, but it's sort of a poster child for a bad website among Brotherhood.
Okay. Yeah.
And so just let me rephrase sort of the question. How do we? What am I trying to?
How do you make it more contemporary or updated?
In a way. Because good design. It seems like good design has to stick with the times, so to speak.
Yes and no. I mean, there's certain things, I might show. I don't know if I have it in this deck though. How I showed it yesterday. How we had a logo for a program that we were doing at our congregation for the youth to go out and to help the older people with their homes and clean up their homes and stuff like that, and do some yard work. And we called it the Dew Crew, but the logo looked like Mountain Dew logo. But it was the DO crew, that kind of thing. So just using things that people are familiar with, but, changing them up a little bit is one way to keep it, current. But good design is good design regardless of what era you live in, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, here's a couple other examples.
Will they stay in-house with Bob Davey, or will they?
So that was the first time. So we did an over-the-shoulder, but it was the first time the over-the-shoulder actually had movement in it. So again, motion makes things feel alive. So if we can take our church logo and animate it in 3D, and that's what we folks see at the beginning of our live stream or our video that we post on our website or whatever, that gets them engaged, draws them in, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what they should see after they see that. But Let me go back to this.
Will Notre Dame stay in-house with Bob Davie, or will they go outside the program for an experienced marquee?
All right, so that's the over-the-shoulder, just with a little motion in there. So, well, shot of Jordan when he was younger. You saw the two box, where it's like, you know, two video boxes. That was the first time we did a two box that wasn't like anchored, where, you know, it was like had, you know, borders around it or whatever. It was just kind of just floating, you know, video. And so we, you know, tried to do some innovative things. The lower third was just very simplistic, name and description. Didn't want to get too crazy with that kind of stuff. Kind of less is more concept, so that, you know, can be something that.
ESPN News will give fans a voice through elements provided by ESPN Net Sports Zone, the most visited site on the internet.
Earlier, we asked the question, who will win the big fight this weekend between Tyson and Holyfield? Thanks to our friends at ESPN Net Sports Zone, most of you think Tyson will win, but a large amount believe it'll go 4 to 6 rounds.
All right, so you saw like different colors there, because initially the concept was, and this is coming from the producers and the directors, we want 3 different colors for different parts of the day. So they wanted the teal in the morning, they wanted the blue in the afternoon, and they wanted the red in the evening. Well, after getting feedback from, you know, various people, they just said, you know, just go with blue, which we were glad of, because then we didn't have to change all the different colors and do different animations and stuff. But a couple examples of things that I've done, you know, designing and also animating, and like I said, you know, if we can add some motion to our stuff, then it will definitely excite some folks. This is actually a logo animation I did for a company that I had myself. It was just me freelancing, and I called it a true creation. But that's that animation I told you about, the 3D animation that was like the first. And then we did some pseudo-virtual. It's kind of like the Weatherman, but over green screen. And this is a little different, where we're just superimposing the computer animation over top of the live video set. But you know, we got to think, you know, are there ways that we can do something similar? You know, Mitch Henry likes to say that when he's introducing me to people, he's like, Tommie wants to turn your live stream into ESPN, or make it look like ESPN. So, you know, when we do our podcast, are there some things that we can add that are, you know, more professional, more of a studio look to it? You know, do we add an over the shoulder? Do we add a lower third to give, you know, more information? Things of that nature. So, good, the bad, the ugly. So just having a little fun, you know, the Raiders of the Lost Ark concept there. And this rally cap logo, open really for the show, I did it 2 ways. The writing on the field, you know, doing the markings, and then like a 3D version. And they liked both of them, so we combined the 2 for the open. And this is from that spoof that they did for the Dodgeball movie. They did a spoof on ESPN called The Ocho. So every year ESPN turns ESPN2 into the Ocho, and they have all these crazy sports that they show. So I had to do some of the animations for the intro to the sport. And this is my favorite, robot fighting, where they make robots out of garbage and fight each other. But basic logo, but then when you move it and you animate it, it just, again, comes to life, adds excitement, draws people in. So that's what we're seeking to do. We want to grab their attention and then keep their attention, with good content as well. So this is, this is a social media post that I did and created. Again, starts out with there's a little bit more of the logo animation in the beginning, but I didn't include that because I really want to redo it. I just did it so quick that I'm not happy with it. So, but when I got here, I wanted to put something out on social to say that I was here. But you'll notice, and we can do the same thing. So, if we have our church logo, and then we go to our live stream, or we go to our minister talking on our video for our website or something like that, why not have a lower third that says who he is and where's he from, and our church logo is part of that, right? Why not maybe have an over-the-shoulder if he's talking about a certain event or something, having an over-the-shoulder animate in. Those are those professional elements that we can add to our videos that just takes it to a whole nother level, and people get engaged and they're like, wow, this is, this church has it going on, kind of thing. So,
Hey, I'm Tommie Washington. Did you know that I worked for ESPN for 30 calendar years?
So, got the lower third animating in, over the shoulder animates in, has additional information on it. But what do you see that is specific to this video? The branding, right? So got the logo in the background on the lower third. I'm wearing the logo, so there's no questioning who this is from, right? It's from Faulkner University, and we're talking about their digital media program. So just keeping that all in mind. Whatever software we're using, software is great. It's a great tool, but it really starts with good design, right? I just use sticky notes and just start, kind of, this is the base is loaded, part of the base is loaded animation, just kind of drawing out some style frames of what I might want,
I use sticky notes too, but they don't look like that.
I mean, this is basic stuff, right? The gospel, the gospel in digital media, right? I could have just, again, that black and white slide that we put up, I could have just typed that out and said the gospel in digital media. But why not see how, that ampersand can kind of fit and create that O in the gospel, and then, have digital media kind of just right in between this little bracket here. And then there's this space right at the top that I can fit the right in there. And then my background kind of gives it some depth with that, perspective going and back. And then I just have, the Bible, the gospel aspect of it. And, it just kind of works together, right? It's clever. It's, it draws people in. And then imagine this being animated now, and coming together onto the screen. Maybe the videos moving in the background, could be pretty dynamic. So, all right. So we talked about some of the tools. This is some stuff that if you guys are into wanting to do a little 3D, there's a couple free programs, Blender, Unity. You may have, my son created his own 3D game using Unity. Unreal Engine has a free version. I want to talk to you about VizRT a little bit. These others are 3D. We're going to be learning Cinema 4D and Toon Boom here at Faulkner, and the students are going to learn VizRT as well. But so VizRT is a broadcast standard software that every sports network and a lot of just other television networks are using for their live productions. So whether it's on location, studio set, if it's a studio, within the studio, like Sports Center or something like that, But again, it could be for your podcast, for your, whatever event, for maybe even for your sermons, right? It's available for free. Has a little bit of a steep learning curve, but they do have free training for it online at Viz Artist. I forget the name of it, but if you just look up VizRT Learning, it'll come up. But this is the type of stuff that it can do. Let me go back. This is a little tricky here. It's not playing. Oh, there it is.
I didn't realize the mouse doesn't like
I was just when I was clicking.
good. I think it must. Where's the mouse? It looks like it's stuck.
It was just allowing me to tap it
Yeah,
before.
you're good. The mouse is actually not even. I don't know what it's doing. Sorry about that. It looks like it's frozen.
Mm.
Here, let me try. All right, maybe it's gonna play nice now. Let's see. How about that?
There you go. All right. Shohei before he got to the Dodgers, but so that's basically 2D animation. So it can do some nice 2D animation, but then my buddy Carl put this together for like a lineup. Oh gosh. Okay, here we go. So this is a live shot of the stadium, and probably before anybody, was on the field, and then he created this little lineup in 3D. So it can do some pretty fun stuff, but which is probably a little bit more than what we would want for the church, but
I like that. That's your worship lineup. He's doing songs.
right, exactly. That's what I was. Right.
They'll never forget they're handing out the Lord's Supper.
You can have the church building in the background or something, But
Not from the kids.
some royalty-free images. You guys probably know about all this stuff. Tools for animation. Of course, the Adobe Creative Cloud. Yeah.
I'm an amateur, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Pixabay. Some of the images are AI generated. And then you have your Firefly with Photoshop and whatnot. And that's AI as well. Then you have your web, mobile apps. And we'll be teaching all this stuff here at Faulkner. Video editing, Premiere. I like Premiere, but then there's others. Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve is really nice. A little higher learning curve with that, but does some amazing stuff when it comes to your video editing. So, but Premiere is plenty. And then for those who need a template, there's a bunch of After Effects templates out there. And they're pretty amazing, I mean, you can just plug in your logo and your text, and it just does all this amazing stuff with it. So, depending on, if you have a certain program or something that you want, and you want to promote it on Facebook or your social or whatever, you can create this title with it. And, again, when things move, people pay attention, and it brings it to life. So Canva, this year is actually the first time I've used Canva, but it's getting better. And so I designed this graphic for the scoreboard for the guys, Jeremy Smith and those guys, to use on the scoreboard. So this part I did in Photoshop just by combining a few images. But then it can do some little quick animation, which is not hard to do at all by just calling up the animation, clicking on the animation menu, clicking on the element that you want to animate, and then just it has a ton of choices of what you want to do. Whether you want to scroll the type. He's kind of just moving to the left. Players moving to the left a little bit, and just that little bit of motion and just that little bit of animation with the type is just a great way to, again, if you have some kind event or something that you want to draw attention to, instead of just posting a still. You can go in, create the still with the template that they have. That's all I did. I mean, I just basically used the template. I didn't design any of the Angular stuff or anything. I just swapped out the logos, changed the type, and swapped out the image. Changed the name or whatever. Chose some of those elements. Chose what animation I wanted it to do, and then it spits out a little MP4 clip that you can just post to any of social or whatever. But it just brings some nice attention to things that you're doing. All right. So AI, we talked a little bit about the different types of software out there for AI. These images, I used the first one, image.art, which is free. I think the first, 5 or 6 are free, and then after that you have to wait 12 hours for it to kind of give you an ability to use it again. But I just wanted something having to do with the Bible and armor, Ephesians 6, the armor of God, and so that was kind of cool that it just spit that out. Or this one, if you crop it so it's not headless. And then, as I showed earlier, this image here, which ended up being pretty amazing. There's a bunch of different AI software out there that, as far as audio, and adjusting your audio, if you're dealing, with doing some creative stuff with audio. AI editing and animation.
Tommy, could I add one thing on audio?
Yeah.
There is it's not AI, well, it may use AI, everything uses AI right now. There is I think it's podcast.adobe.com.
Okay.
And it's free, as long as you got a Adobe podcast. You just run your audio through that, and it will clean it up and make it sound pretty incredible in most situations. And so, if you've got a spoken word, and it's especially good for like preaching and teaching and stuff,
right,
it will really amp up your audio and make it sound really good.
Yeah.
And take out all the background noise and all sorts of stuff. It's great.
And the new Premiere Pro update, it's now in there as well.
Oh, is it? Nice. Okay.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. As you may have heard in that promotional spot that I did, I was just using my camera audio, so I'm definitely, and I keep telling Mitch I'm going to redo it, but haven't had time. But definitely go back. I just ordered, a set of these, microphones, that I can use, or something like that. There's podcast.adobe.
Yeah, it's podcast or podcast.
Yeah, and I have the new Premiere too, so I can just use it in that. Yeah, so when I go to redo that, I'll clean that up.
It's completely free.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to have. Yeah, I think you just have to have an Adobe sign-in. That's free.
Perfect. Yeah, it's great. Editing and animation. All right, some do's and don'ts. Just that I've seen in the church, and actually I was teaching graphic design and animation online for several years, about 8 years before I got here, just to get some experience teaching and stuff like that. And there's just a lot of times people think they're being creative by doing some of these things, but they're taboos. It's like you should not do them. Okay, so I just wanted to show you some of them. All right. I'm gonna take this type and I'm gonna stack it. But what they don't realize, or what we don't realize sometimes, is that the folks who design the typefaces spent years making it work perfectly when they're side by side. So by stacking it, we just undo all of that, all of their wonderful work. And you know, some
should have moved it over to use the T adult, right? That's the only thing you should change.
So, you know, and especially like if you have an I or some, you know, letters that, you know, it creates a weird space when you stack it. So if we're going to do vertical text, if it's on the left side of your composition, we go reading up. If it's on the right, we go reading down. And if it's the middle, you just have to choose one or the other, right? Because we kind of read left to right, so we read up and over and down, you know, so don't stack your text. Don't distort, right? You know, we want to, again, get creative, and I just need this wide type, so I'm just going to grab it and stretch it. No, don't do that, right? Typographer saying, "Oh, I spent all the years making this typeface and making it perfect the way I wanted it to be, and you just took it and you just destroyed all that." So don't stretch, don't squeeze, and then we do this. I see the same thing with images. You know, well, I need this image to fit in the space, so I'm just going to squeeze it. No, don't do that. You know, just crop it, make it smaller. You know, do what you have to do. Use a different image or something. But don't squeeze or stretch, distort. Widows, you know, sometimes we don't realize that this is called a widow because it's just one word by itself. You have this nice, beautiful, you know, piece of text, column text or whatever it is. And so if that's the case, then we need to bring the column in, make it a little shorter, expand the letter spacing or something so that we have at least, you know, 3 or 4 words down here as well. Okay, so no widows. And consider your duration. You know, we talked about, you know, those little snippets of video, taking a sermon and breaking it up into pieces. One of my projects I'm working on is what I'm calling herd videos. You know how Jesus says, he who has an ear, let him hear. So I want to take a little, I've done some sermons in the past, and you know, speaking of those, you know, little snippets, have you heard of a snackable? Right, it's just like a little snippet of video. So what I did with some of those sermons is I just, you know, edited them down to, you know, 30 seconds, you know, a minute of a piece of information that I'm giving in that sermon, and you know, I have, you know, a little front page title slide like you'd see on YouTube or whatever of what that section is about. You know, it runs for 30 seconds and it's done, you know. So just kind of like we talked about repurposing, right, some of that stuff. But, you know, notice the duration. And I don't know how, I just got this off of Google, and I don't know how accurate it is. I thought the basic attention span was like 20 minutes, right? But they're saying, you know, for I can understand children being, you know, about 30 seconds, but teenagers, 28 to, and I think this is mainly screen time that they're talking about. So, you know, they'll watch something for 30 minutes, I guess, to 42 minutes, depending on, you know, I guess what they're watching. But look at the adults. That's surprising to me. I thought the adults would have a longer, you know, attention span, but it's only 8.25 seconds. So that means those snackables are important, right? We need to definitely be thinking about repurposing our content to make them really short. Because a lot of times when I'm going through Facebook or, you know, YouTube, and I'm watching those little shorts that they give me, even some of them are from sermons, you know, from secular, you know, ministers and stuff like that. I don't see a lot of Church of Christ snackable video clips, you know, from members of the church. I see tons from, you know, denominational preachers and, you know, just, you know, stuff like that. So we need to be better at that, I think. I need, you know, let's chop up those sermons and repurpose them and, you know, add a nice little animation at the front or something, you know, grab the attention. and give them that information within 30 seconds to a minute or what have you. But then consistent branding throughout, right? Feel bad for busting the chops of this congregation nearby, but this is their logo, which I loved and I thought was really creative. But then this is their bulletin, which no branding, text going all the way across the page. Everything's basically, the same size. There's no hierarchy. Nothing has more importance than anything else. Their note to their guests is like the smallest type on the page, right? I mean, so I guess you're not really concerned about your guests, because you want them to, get that message, right? So just, so with your logo, your letterhead, your bulletin, your signage out front, because, we had a congregation that was on a main road up in Charlotte. And so, it was digital. So within like 2 or 3 slides that were shown, we would again show our logo, right? Just to create that branding. So then when they see it somewhere else on the website or whatever, oh, that's the church on Gold Hill Road, that kind of thing. Social media, podcasts, our logo animation, our live stream, okay, should all be consistent. We see that branding throughout. All right. Some things to do, keep biophilia in mind, keep the Gestalt design theory in mind. Always consult reference material before designing. All right. I never just come out of my head with a design. I always look at what other professionals are doing first, right? Depending on if I'm designing a poster, right? I did a bunch of posters for VBS years ago. Of course they had the theme of what they wanted it to talk about or what it wanted it to be, but I looked at other posters, what other people were doing professionally, okay? If not enrolled in Faulkner's digital media program, use online tutorials for professional training because you can get a lot of information. I wish I had that when I was younger, the internet and being able to just go online and I still use it today. I mean, if there's something that I'm working in Cinema 4D or Premiere, whatever, After Effects, and I'm like, how do you do that again? And I just Google it, and I just watch the tutorial, and there's like 6 or 7 of them, showing me how to do it. Keep your duration in mind, your attention spans in mind, and make it move if possible, right? Because when things move, they feel alive. All right, so I've been extremely blessed to win some awards over the years, been nominated and stuff, but the biggest blessing in my life, to be honest with you, to be here and developing this program for Faulkner, but the biggest blessing is really spiritual, when I think about my boys, both of my boys are strong Christian men in the Lord's church. They married strong Christian women, and now my oldest son just had his 4th child, and they're training them up in the way that they should go. That's true success, guys, right? I mean, I've had some success in the world, but when you've got Christian men who are now leading their families to be Christians, and that's our goal, right? And then now to share that with other people, and that whole concept of evangelism is what it's all about. But one of my dreams for Faulkner is, as I think somebody mentioned it earlier, is to have a film school, right? So take all this digital media stuff, this animation stuff. I'm going to show you a title sequence that I did for when I was working on my master's in a second. But we've seen these amazing Christian films, and we're blown away by them. But then when we get to the gospel salvation, salvation and the gospel message, it's watered down, right? It's not truly biblical, right? And so I'd love to have a film school that's putting out, directors and producers that are eventually making films that like The Chosen, that was mentioned earlier. But we have repentance and confession and baptism into Christ and staying faithful until death and all that good stuff, right? As part of the message. This is, so anybody ever see the movie, and I'm probably running long, I apologize, but the movie, I'm almost done. A Beautiful Mind? You ever see A Beautiful Mind, right? So, is it Russell Crowe? And how he's trying to, he's got schizophrenia, right? And so the project, when I was working on my master's at SCAD, was to just take a movie and redo the title sequence. And so the fact that, one of the most dramatic parts of the movie is when she goes into the garage and sees that he's gone back into his, thinking that he's the whole conspiracy theory and all that stuff. And he's got this whole map of all these, clippings and things of that nature, and the thread going from one to another, so that. So I thought that was like a key part of the film. So I created this title sequence that used some of the music from but it's all about that whole concept, and then you'll see how it resolves to introducing some of the actors in the film. He had like these numbers and just things that he was highlighting and all these clippings and whatnot. So in our upcoming motion graphics class, we'll create a title sequence, but it's just kind of moving towards that goal of having a film school here eventually. So keep that in your prayers. And that's it. Questions or comments from anybody? We're good? All right. Thank you, guys.